Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Monsi if you're new here, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about the 5 books that I read at the end of 2025. We're going to jump right into it. The first book that I have to talk about is The Quiet Tenant by Clémence Michallon. I'm going to be honest, I read this such a long time ago, beginning of October, that I don't remember my super granular thoughts on it, and I don't even remember everything that happens. But I will tell you that when I finished this, I remember thinking to myself that it was one of the best thrillers I had read in a while. So this is about a serial killer who disguises himself really well as an upstanding citizen of the small town that he lives in. He presents himself as a grieving widower, a devoted father, a helpful neighbor, all while harboring his really disturbing, dark secret. The story is told from the perspectives of 3 women who are connected to him in very, very different ways. One is of his 12-year-old daughter, one is of the town bartender who has a big fat crush on him, and the third is of a woman that he's been holding hostage and abusing for 5 years. Stylistically, this is comparable to Notes on an Execution, but it is less literary and more thrilling, I would say. This is not a mystery, it's not a whodunit because you know who did it, right? This is way more suspense driven. You're on the edge of your seat waiting to see how everything is going to unfold. This was an adrenaline pumping page turner, but it also had really great social commentary blended in about not only what it's like to be a woman living in this world, but a survivor of abuse and trauma. This was just really good. I gave it 4 stars, and the only reason I didn't give it a full 5-star rating is that there was one perspective, one storyline that I didn't get full closure with. But for me, a 4-star for a thriller is excellent. So, highly recommend. Okay, now I have not 1, but 2 memoirs that I want to talk about. Before I do that, I want to briefly share my thoughts with you on rating memoirs. As someone who reads her fair share of them, I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, but I always forget to mention it in my videos. So if you'll allow me, I'd like to do that right here, right now. And if you're not interested, just skip ahead. I always include timestamps. So a lot of people choose not to rate memoirs. And I've also seen some people that automatically give every memoir they read a 5-star rating because they don't want to feel like they're placing judgment on someone's lived experience. And I totally get that. I do not take issue with people doing things that way. That said, I want to explain why and how I personally rate memoirs, because for me, there's so much to engage with outside of the factual events of someone's life. I look at the approach, the lens through which someone chooses to tell their story. 2 people can live very different lives or even similar ones, but the way they frame their experiences makes a huge difference. I also pay close attention to the writing itself. Do I like the author's use of language? Do the words feel intentional? Is the narrative structured in a way that feels cohesive and compelling? Another big factor for me is depth of insight. Does the author demonstrate growth or a changing awareness over time? I'm interested in what happened, but I also want to know what the author's understanding of it is now. Something that's especially important to me is the proper balance between anecdote and reflection. Too much anecdote can start to feel like a diary, but too much reflection can veer into self-help territory. I'm not really looking for either of those when I pick up a memoir. I want that sweet middle ground. I also ask whether the author brings a unique perspective to the story, not necessarily a unique life, but a distinct way of seeing and interpreting it. And finally, I think about honesty. Does it feel emotionally truthful? Does it acknowledge complexity and uncertainty? Or does it feel overly curated? All of that is why I feel comfortable rating memoirs, not as a judgment on someone's life, but more as a conversation about perspective and craft and storytelling. Now for my first memoir that I read at the end of the year, I have Semi Well Adjusted Despite Literally Everything by Alyson Stoner. I am the exact same age as Alyson Stoner. I grew up watching them on my television screen, so I was really excited to pick this up and learn more about their behind the scenes. First, I want to talk about what I liked about this book. To start, I think that it raises really important questions about how children in the entertainment industry should be treated, and it also offers up its own solutions. It has juicy anecdotes and piping hot tea that I think are quite satisfying to people that have followed Alyson Stoner's career the way that I have. There was a lot that was covered, including but not limited to body dysmorphia, sexual assault, child abuse, and religious trauma. I think that Alyson Stoner was incredibly vulnerable in sharing those parts of their story, and I think for some readers this could be very cathartic to hear about. While my overall experience with this book was net positive, I do have some cons. Something about the writing style didn't work for me. There was a lot of therapy speak that came off as performative at times. I got the sense that Alyson Stoner hasn't completely shed all of their people-pleasing tendencies, which is a difficult thing to do, but because of that, it felt a little bit too polished for my taste. I also could have done without the self-promotion at the end. While I really appreciate that Alyson uses their platform to address child exploitation and mental health, promoting their own products at the end that are not free, it felt more like marketing than advocacy. I don't believe that there was any ill intent there, but nonetheless, it was a little off-putting. So I ended up giving this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The second memoir that I chose to read is Dinner for Vampires by Bethany Joy Lenz. This is essentially about Bethany Joy Lenz's gradual entrance into a religious cult and her eventual exit out of it, all while starring on the hit drama series One Tree Hill. As someone who has watched One Tree Hill many a times, I was always going to read this book, but I do think that this is that rare type of memoir where you don't need to know anything about the author beforehand to get something meaningful out of it. I have read several cultish memoirs. I'm endlessly fascinated by cults, but I've never read one from the perspective of someone that wasn't born into the environment. She does a really great job at setting the scene for us, describing the emotional state that she was in at the time that she was introduced to this group, outlining the strategies that they used to manipulate her and draw her in, explaining how she justified to herself their strange behaviors because she was so desperate for community and because she genuinely wanted to believe the best in people. She really digs into the psychology behind it all, and it was so captivating. I mean, at times it honestly read a little bit like a thriller. On a personal note, parts of this story really resonated with me. I'm not religious in any way, shape, or form, but I did grow up in that type of environment. I attended a Southern Baptist school for 15 years of my life, and I 100% experienced that same pressure to conform and accept beliefs that didn't ring true for me. It's probably why I'm so intrigued by cultish books, or at least it's a contributing factor. One aspect of Bethany's story that I found to be particularly unique is that after she left the church, she was able to rebuild her relationship with her faith and return to it in a much healthier way. I'm not Christian or anything, like I said earlier, but I am all for people finding their peace as long as it doesn't negatively impact anyone else. So I'm really glad that she was able to do that. This was a 4.5 out of 5 stars for me. I really enjoyed it. Next, I read We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer. This is my least favorite book of the bunch, but it is not a bad book by any means. In fact, it was a lot of people's favorite book of 2024, and I've even seen it on people's top lists of 2025. This is about a couple that moves into this secluded home deep in the woods. One evening, Eve is home alone when a family comes and knocking at her door. The dad is like, "Hey, I used to live here. This is my childhood home, and I know this is kind of weird, but we were just in your neck of the woods, and I was hoping that I could show my wife and my kids where I grew up. Is it cool if we do a tour?" Eve wants to say no for all the reasons you can imagine, but she ends up saying yes because she's a massive people pleaser. And let's just say that the family completely and totally overstays their welcome. It's the premise that sold me on this. Just knowing the synopsis, I desperately wanted to know what was going to happen. There are 2 things that went wrong here that are specific to me. They are me problems and they have nothing to do with the actual quality of the book. Number 1, I've been doing this thing where I've been trying to go into books as blindly as possible, which I think is fun. So I thought that this was going to be a thriller when it's in fact a horror, my least favorite genre. That's on me. That's on me. Second, I definitely did not put in the effort that is required to experience this book to its fullest. For the reader that is willing, this can be very interactive, okay? There's so much mixed media in this book that you can actually engage with. For example, there's Morse code that you can go and decipher. There's footnotes in other languages that you can translate. There's websites that you can actually visit. And apparently, the email addresses that are included throughout the book, you can write to and receive responses from. So I can understand why that would be super fun for some people. However, that is not why I read. So I didn't do any of that. And therefore, I did not get out of it as much as I could have. The ending of this book is super ambiguous. This is one of those books that is best read alongside someone so you can theorize together. But if you pick it up alone, don't worry. There are so many Reddit threads that you can comb through to help you come up with an interpretation if that's what you want. None of that is my cup of tea. None of what I just described comes close to what I like in my reading experiences. But I didn't have a terrible time reading it, so I gave it a 3 stars, just like a middle of the road rating. The last book that I read in 2025 is Small Things Like These by Keegan. This was my first experience reading from Keegan, and I am itching to read more of her works. I already have Foster requested through the library. As I mentioned before, I have been going into books as blindly as possible. So all I knew about this book, or all I had remembered from other people's reviews of it, was that it took place in the days leading up to Christmas. So I decided to read this in the days leading up to Christmas, thinking that it would get me in a festive mood. Not the case. Not the case at all. This is not a fun holiday book. It is a pretty harrowing story. It does have its tender moments, and there are some holiday adjacent themes like the power of giving and the importance of kindness. But overall, this is not a book that's going to make you feel jolly. That being said, this is a perfect winter book if you're feeling inclined to pick it up in the next couple of months. In a nutshell, the story follows a coal merchant, a father, a husband who uncovers a really dark secret about something that's happening in his town, something that actually took place in Irish history. And once he becomes aware of it, the knowledge of it completely upends his very ordinary, very quaint, very quiet life. This is a subtle book. Nothing is shoved in your face. The prose is minimalistic. It's sharp. Every single word is so carefully chosen. The words are so sparse that the emotional impact of it all kind of sneaks up on you by the end of the book. I'm always so impressed when an author can convey so much with so little. Like, this book is barely over 100 pages and it's so powerful. I learned something new and I felt something deep. And at the end of the day, that's really all that I'm looking for in my reading experiences. So this was an easy 5 stars for me. Ended my year on such a high note. Small things like these. Go read it. And those are the 5 books that I ended 2025 with. Not bad. Looking ahead into 2026, I am planning on making the same video that I made around this time last year, where I rank all of the books that I read in 2025 from my worst to my best. I'm going to be filming that this weekend, but I don't know when exactly I'll be publishing it, but you can be on the lookout for that if you're interested. I know that I haven't been the best or the most consistent with posting on YouTube. There was just a lot going on in 2025, but I am hoping to get on some sort of regular schedule with my YouTube videos again in 2026. My commitment to myself is that I'm gonna post on here at least once a month. I don't wanna go much longer than that between videos. More often than not, it's probably gonna be a wrap-up video of sorts like I did today, but I might also occasionally throw in a vlog here and there. So I'm still gonna be around. If you have watched all the way through, thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.